Jeri Morgan. I'm CEO of Code Blue Computing right here in Denver. And this is episode 2 of our Denver Business Owner virtual town hall. And really what we're trying to talk about the last couple weeks have been a roller coaster for everyone, but for business owners in particular. And I'm very excited about the folks that we're going to be talking to today, because one of the core issues that a lot of us are having, and the things that we're worried about right now, are related to money. They're related to money. We're worried about how long we're going to be finding ourselves in some of these situations. We're worried about maybe some planning that we hadn't done before now, and are trying to figure out what to do. So I want to go ahead and introduce our first panelist. Her name is Pamela Maass. She owns a Maass Law here in Denver. And Pam, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your business?
Thank you, Jeri. Yeah, so I am primarily an estate planning attorney, and I've been practicing law for 10 years. And I got my start out as a deputy district attorney up in the 20th, up in Boulder, so
Right.
not far from Jeri. And I saw this real pattern where some type of tragedy would happen. So whether it was an accident or a crime, and people would be stuck in probate court, their families would be stuck in probate court. It'd be very expensive. And I knew I wanted to do something to affect that, but I didn't really know how until I went through it with my own family. And my grandma, when she passed away, before she did, she went to a really traditional estate planning firm in Arizona. She spent about $5,000 on an estate plan. And when she passed away, her plan actually failed. It did not work. And so our family was in court and conflict for many years. I still have family members who are at odds around it. And in that process of cleaning it all up, I found out, I thought the firm had committed malpractice, but I found out what that firm had done was actually really common practice in the estate planning industry. So when I went out into civil practice, my real mission was to kind of flip that and really make sure that what happened to my family doesn't happen to other families.
Okay.
So I do comprehensive, personalized estate planning. I don't do form documents. And then I have spent some of the time doing litigation for the last 10 years. So I do some litigation, and I enjoy bringing that experience to help people avoid court.
Right. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Pam. And now I want to introduce Grayson Hofferber, who is the president of Millennial Wealth Management here in Broomfield. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your business, Grayson?
Yeah, certainly. Well, first and foremost, thank you, Jeri, for putting this together and hosting us. Right now, we are experiencing some pretty uncertain times, and I think this is very timely. So I'm Grayson Hofferber. I am the president and founder of Millennial Wealth Management. We are a fee-only fiduciary all the time for our clients' financial planning firm. And ultimately what that means is we're helping people plan out their financial lives, whether it starts with budgeting or folks that are maybe kind of beginning the process, getting out of debt, paying down student loans, to the more complex, figuring out retirement and saving for college for their kiddos, or assisting on the estate planning side. So
okay,
we kind of cover the full basis, and we do that on a monthly subscription fee, much like a retainer, but we don't charge against it. So we just continue to help people on an ongoing basis.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. And I was just going to kind of jump right into some questions that I had for Pam initially. I know that there may be some areas where you each may have information on a particular topic. So definitely, if there is something that you can add, or add additional information to anything that we talk about today, you guys definitely do that. But I wanted to start with Pam. Really in this strange time that we find ourselves in right now, from an estate planning perspective, what should we be looking at right now for our own families, and our own businesses as well?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeri. And I really, believe right now that in these uncertain times, that knowledge is power, and that my hope by sharing some of this information and why I'm so happy you put this on as well is just really giving people peace of mind about controlling the controllable. And so I think for this question, the first thing I would say in the short term, just urgently and immediately, is to kind of put together a personal resource map. So if you're working with someone like Grayson, this is something you've probably put together if you're working with someone like them. But if you're not, really sitting down and writing down where all your assets are, where all your legal documents are, if you have anything in place, what's updated, what's not. And so kind of the reason is in Colorado, we have $464 million in our unclaimed property. And what that means is that's the amount of money that people have passed away and their loved ones didn't know about these assets, and they're currently unclaimed. And so there's a huge risk to your loved ones that they're not going to know if something happened to you, where your assets are, because there's not some automated process for that. So I would say in the immediate term, really sitting down with your loved ones and finding out with yourself, with your parents, with your family members, what they actually have, where items are, and as kind of a starting point to some additional things that you can do, which we can talk about as well. But I would say that's the immediate short-term need to really take that first step.
Right. And that's really interesting. My dad actually passed away back in November, and he did have an estate plan. But what we found after the fact was that even though he had a plan in place and we knew what he wanted and kind of what we were supposed to do, some of the pieces as far as where the accounts were, we didn't actually know. So there are additional pieces with that you really need to think about it all the way through with that. And they're hard conversations to have because you're talking about when you're not going to be here. So it is kind of they're uncomfortable conversations to have, but they're very important conversations to have, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Now, so tell me, if you have no estate plan in place right now, like in this instance that we find ourselves in right now, what can people do right now if they don't have anything in place and they're a little worried?
Yeah. So, well, the first thing to know is that if you don't have anything in place, you're not alone, right? 69% of Americans don't have any documents in place, and that's why our probate courts are so full. So don't feel bad. And I think that's the first thing, because a lot of times, especially now more than ever, we're so much harder on ourselves. So, take that beat. But there are a lot of resources. I would say, speaking with an estate planning attorney, whether it's me or someone else, is a good first step. And most estate planning attorneys like myself do free initial consultations. And essentially the things you want to be thinking about right now in the short term is, first of all, if something were to happen to you where you were to become incapacitated, who would be able to pay your bills? Who would be able to have access to your accounts? And a lot of us assume that because we're married, or if you are married, that your spouse would automatically be able to get access to your bank account. But if they're not actually on that account, they can't just walk into the bank. They can't use that money. So, as part of kind of my initial conversations with clients, I do go through all their assets and talk through all these things. So I would say the first thing is making sure that you have some type of durable power of attorney in place to make sure that if you were incapacitated, that your loved ones would be able to pay your bills, would be able to pay your health bills, would be able to get you resources. Kind of the second more immediate term thing is kind of medical durable power of attorney, medical power of attorneys and healthcare directives. I think that's the other issue. If you, right now, even just having the conversations with your loved ones about what medications you're on, what allergies you have, what things you would want to avoid and not, and putting them into a document would be really helpful if in an emergency situation you were to have to go into the hospital and you have that information laid out. But the legal documents you need to really execute your wishes, you would need to either put in place with an attorney or with some type of legal service. The other final thing that I would talk about would be asset protection and knowing that your assets are going to transfer in the way that you want. And a lot of the online services that are out there really don't give you that full range of protection as far as your assets. So if you have a document here or there, and you put in place a will, there's a lot of assets that would transfer outside of your will. For example, if you have beneficiary designations on your life insurance, those are going to transfer regardless of what your will says. So there's a lot of holes that, unless you speak with a qualified attorney and really talk through, you really aren't going to understand what would happen. And that's kind of that next piece.
Okay. And then, and this is just kind of a logistical question that I'm curious about right now. Are you able to execute documents electronically right now? Or if people are trying to get plans in place right now, can that be done completely electronically?
Yeah, so I am doing all of my working with my clients virtually through Zoom right now. And Colorado just put into place. So on Monday, we got our rules yesterday, allowing for remote notaries. And so there are certain formalities you have to follow to do remote notarizations. Essentially, what I'm doing with my clients right now is following those to execute those documents virtually.
Right.
And then I am going to circle back with people when this is over, just as a secondary, and re-notarize as an additional redundancy. You know, I'm one of those people that likes to do as many redundancies as possible. But yeah, right now, bottom line, you can, in Colorado, in the state of Colorado, we have just passed allowing remote notarizations.
Okay, that's awesome. And even I had a similar conversation with my bank earlier in the week, because it, up until this kind of happened, you couldn't open accounts. You had to go into the branch for a lot of things, and they just, they clearly can't do that right now. So they've had to move to some more electronic types of ways of doing what they do that they've never done before. So coming from an IT perspective, it's been interesting to kind of watch, the states kind of adjust, and pivot a little bit, so that people can do the things, that they need to do while we're kind of doing what we need to do to try and keep everybody safe. So it's been kind of interesting to see, where there were some industries where they were pushing back a little bit on some of the technological things that you could do, and are implementing some of those. So I'm interested to kind of see what will happen when we get on the other side of this, as far as whether some of these different changes that have happened will stay, or if we'll kind of go back. The same thing with real estate. Now, Pam, somebody told me they're doing they're doing drive-through closings on real estate transactions right now. So it's very, all of it is very interesting to me. And I think it's more interesting because I'm just in my house with my kids. So I'm just like taking in all the information. So it's all very interesting. Now, I had one more question for you, Pam, and it's something that I'm interested in just because I have a family business. When you have a family-owned business, are there particular challenges or particular things that you should be looking at kind of from an estate planning perspective when you've got a family business in play?
Absolutely. And I think with business owners, when you own your own business, when I'm working with all of my business owner clients, whether it's family-owned or small business, or larger business, is really making sure that you have a plan in place that if something were to happen to you, you know what's going to happen to your business. And so you want to have a corporate succession plan in place, a business succession plan in place. And that's just a fancy way of saying, making sure that if you were to become incapacitated, your business wouldn't shut down. If you were to become incapacitated, someone would be able to pay your business bills, someone would be able to make decisions, someone would be able to operate the business. And if you were to pass away, how you would want that business transitioned, who you would want to take over. And for some of my clients, especially with solos, a lot of times, when it's a solo business owner or a family business owner, sometimes they want the business just sold and that assets to go to their beneficiaries. Other times, it's a business where they have specific family members they would want to take over. And if you don't have something like that in place, essentially what would happen is your business would go through the probate process. So your loved ones would have to go to court. They would have to file and open up a case. And it would take a long time. So 9 months to 2 years for that to get resolved. In the meantime, that would, take a significant toll, not only on your business, but on your family.
Right. Okay. All right. Good information. So I want to jump over to Grayson. I've got a couple of questions for him, and the thing that I've had a lot of conversations with business owners over the last couple of weeks, and and by and large, most people that have a business plan for downturns. They plan for dips, but they don't necessarily plan for the brakes to get hit and kind of for you to be thrown through the windshield of your own business. And there's a lot of businesses that and truthfully, most businesses, except for a few exceptions, their revenue has dropped substantially over these last couple of weeks. There are a lot of businesses that their revenue went to nothing. And so if you were a business owner like that, where your revenue has really taken a hit, kind of what are some strategies, or what are some things that you should be thinking about, or or doing right now?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. First and foremost, I want to say, because of the coronavirus and
Right.
the pressure it's put on small business, my firm is offering free 1-hour sessions in order to get
Right.
people the advice and the help that they need right now. So if you're
Right.
impacted as a business owner, or you've been laid off, give us a shout, and we'll help you kind of put some things in place over the course of an hour. But it's a great question, because most small businesses that we encounter are cash flow dependent. So right now, when you can't open a business, or you can't offer the same services,
Right.
because the government's telling you can't do it, or you're
Mhm.
putting people's safety at risk,
Right.
you're kind of in this really bad spot. Most businesses do not have that rainy day fund that you should have. And so
Right.
first and foremost, I hope folks take an opportunity to look at this very much like your personal finances. You should have an emergency fund, not only for your personal finances,
Mhm.
but also for your business as well. And that's just to weather these storms. And this is kind of an unprecedented thing that we're seeing in terms of just complete economic shutdown in some sectors. But by and large, it's a good opportunity for business owners to really evaluate where they're at in business, especially if you're cash flow dependent and you're not operating right now.
Right.
We talked recently with a business owner of a daycare center, and they're not able to operate currently in their municipality. And so with that said, lots of questions around viability, and also a sense of this burden of needing to take care of their employees.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a really good opportunity to just revisit what is the goal in operating the business. Are you on track to reach those goals? Are you heading towards some sort of exit strategy or succession plan, as Pamela alluded to earlier? It is a really, really important piece to have not only those discussions, but that succession plan in place. And so for some folks, they're looking in the eyes of having to shutter their business for good. And I think we're going to see a ton of that over the next few months. Now, for the folks that really look in the mirror, and as business owners, they say, no, we're on a mission. We're doing well. We can get through this. There are resources available. So the SBA, Small Business Association, and you can go to their website, sba.gov. They're doing disaster relief small business loans. So if you are a cash flow dependent business, you are worried about how are you making payroll over the next few weeks,
Right.
check out sba.gov. They are doing loans for very small amounts to very large amounts. So they're looking at everything in terms of need. As far as some other resources available, there are some leave opportunities potentially for your employees if they're affected by maybe a family member that they're taking care of through this, or if they're directly impacted as well. So we look at family leave opportunities as well. What I would say for you small business owners that are worried about some of your employees.
Right.
Bottom line is, it's a great time to revisit where you're at in your business, where you're headed with your business, and ultimately, is this the path you're going down, the right one for you? and it could be that you find yourself in a place where away at this point. I mean, those are really tough decisions and tough things to talk about. But as a financial planner, we look at all the options for you. We're not going to just kind of do a one size fits all and say, no, you got to keep your doors open right now. You got to do what you can for your employees. It's not the thing for everybody. So have those tough conversations.
Well, and I think it's really interesting, when you're the kind of person that opens a business, generally you are a little more risk tolerant, or, kind of not jumping out of a plane risky, but, you see things differently. You have a bit of a vision, but I know like the economy has been really good for quite some time, and I know a lot of business owners, we've been focused on growing in the growth and taking some of those risks that that kind of come with growth. And I know a lot of people that I've talked to over the last week. I mean, this definitely has made an impression, whether you decide to go forward with your business, or if it's something that you decide not to. I think there's a lot of businesses that were kind of on the cusp of kind of just on the cusp of almost like that paycheck to paycheck through their business, and I think it's going to help a lot of businesses really look at that a lot more closely. Or even like a lot of businesses don't sit down with a financial planner, or finance professionals in general to kind of dial out how healthy their business really is. But those are things we should actually be doing, right?
Got it. Yeah, it is kind of one of these weird anomalies we see with small business owners in particular. They may pay a lot of attention on the personal side, may be really diligent about putting together a personal financial budget and adhering to their the cash flow on a month-to-month basis. We see it on their business, not so much, and it's very bizarre because it should be looked at in a very similar fashion. You should know your budget, you should know your cash flow, your ins and outs, and right now is that opportunity to look at, all right, what is the fat? For my business even, right? So my business is directly tied to the market in terms of some of our compensation, but at the same time, client acquisition is one of those things typically during these times that's incredibly trepid. So we don't look at the same kind of advertising and marketing spend for client acquisition right now as we would in a thriving market. So it's a good opportunity to just really reevaluate where you're at, dig into your numbers. But I will say this, Jeri, and you kind of alluded to it a moment ago, we went into this with a solid economic backdrop. So the idea that, we're not going to be able to recover from this, I feel like is not something we should be focusing on. I think if we're taking care of ourselves first, making sure we're, abiding by the stay at home, let's flatten the curve, right? Let's get past this virus and the infection. Then our economy can get back on track. Let's get to that point. So bottom line, take care of yourself, take care of your family, make sure that this virus doesn't have any greater impact on you in the microeconomy as well as on the larger macro scale. So do that. But with that said, the economy was strong going into this. I do think we will return to growth after a couple of quarters. So toward the latter end of this year, if you can sustain, I think you'll see some good opportunities. There's going to be a lot of consolidation. So if your business is maybe kind of over the hump, as you mentioned a minute ago, you may be a place to help other small businesses out by acquiring or merging and continuing to employ folks. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity come out of this. It may just not be what some businesses were projecting or thinking.
Well, and something like this, I mean, you could never, kind of plan for something like this, and I think that's why it's had as much of an impact as it has, just because like never in your wildest dreams would you kind of picture this happening, or even like the couple of weeks leading up to it. I couldn't wrap my head around that. But as we kind of went through these weeks, I know there was quite a bit of market, volatility. I mean, it's been all over the place for someone that feels like, they've got some money that they're comfortable with. What would you recommend that people do? Like, is now a time to buy? Is now a time to kind of hang out and wait? Like, what would you recommend people do?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're getting it all the time right now. Fortunately for us, we tend to cater to higher income earning millennials that
Right.
really have a lot of discretionary income, and we're getting the phone calls, hey, the market's down a ton. Should we be putting money in? The unequivocal answer is absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
The fact of the matter is, I've been in this business. This is my 10th year in this business. I haven't seen anything quite like this.
Right.
As an investor, I went through 08 myself, but I was not helping clients at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Folks that have been in the industry 60 years haven't seen anything like this. So
Right.
what we have to look back on is just history. And
Mm-hmm.
the closest thing we can really get to total economic shutdown like we're seeing here, you got to go back to the Great Depression.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you were to look at a long-term stock market chart and you had the absolute power to pick the best place to put your money in, most folks would do that at the trough coming out of the Great Depression.
Right.
And so I look at that and I tell people, what we're presented with here may look horrible. It may feel really bad.
Mm-hmm.
But in the grand scheme, if we have a long-term vision as to what could come out of this, this is a generational buying opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I will tell you, if you do have money to put to work, whether that's on a recurring basis or you're sitting on a lump sum of some sort, maybe your emergency savings has crept up more than it really needs to over the last few years,
Mm-hmm.
this is probably a great time to reevaluate your strategy.
Okay.
I'm recommending for folks, as some of the reading I've done is projecting the peak infection in the United States to be somewhere around May 10th, May 12th, something like that's kind of what some of these projections are showing.
Right.
We're going to sustain through, my guess is through the summer in terms of dealing with this. So never have we had an opportunity of a finite kind of runway to say the market's going to have some turbulence over this period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have, an IRA contribution to make to fully fund your IRA, $500 per week over the next 12 weeks,
Right.
put you at a fully funded IRA and take advantage of the market volatility over the next few months without having to guess, is this the bottom?
Right.
So the trick is to have a system in place to be methodical about how you invest and automate it as much as you can. Let it happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to do really, really well. When I liken it to going to the grocery store. You don't want to pay full price for grocery store products, the things that you're going to go to. But
Right.
more than likely, you're going to pay full price if you only go to the market every, once in a month or once every couple of months. You're just going to get the prices that are there. If you
Right.
invest on a weekly basis, go to the market on a weekly basis, you're going to catch some on sale. And
Right.
so, that's kind of the mentality you have to have is be systematic and methodical about how you're taking advantage of this opportunity.
And now tell me, because part of my struggle, and even other people that I've spoken with, that it's really hard to kind of plan how long this is going to be, right? We started thinking a couple of weeks, and then we thought a month, and and now it's looking like June, maybe July. So for people with those emergency funds, or if they're worried that kind of what I have for an emergency fund may not be enough, I mean, what's kind of a strategy or something that you would talk to people like that maybe they have an emergency fund, but then they also have investments? Do they leave the investments alone until they hit that that need for it, or kind of what's a good strategy?
Yeah, great question. So one of the worst things you could do right now while the market is down is panic and sell your
Right.
investments.
Mm-hmm.
You will not make up those losses in the same manner as you would by just writing it out.
Right.
So I will tell you, we have been through recession after recession, and every time we have gone through one, we have come out of it and we've gone to new all-time market highs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say, if we were to look back just to the most recent recession in 2008, whenever we hit peak, market to the trough of the market in 2009, it's 6 months. Okay, that was a true financial crisis-led recession.
Right.
So 6 months. If we figure, okay, well, maybe this lasts 6 months. Well, that still puts us toward the end of the year. September, October, where we could potentially have bottomed out. And so over this period of time, you should be putting money in as the market is going down. Because we're against that backdrop of a solid economy prior to this, I think it's different. I think we're going to be in a more V-shaped type of recovery, which means it'll be a quicker rebound. And we're seeing that on the backdrop of the greatest stimulus we have ever seen from the Federal Reserve.
Right.
So the financial crisis in 2008 doesn't even touch the stimulus that the Fed and the Treasury are putting to work right now. So we want to be an investor.
Right, and definitely I think that's one of the things that I've taken as very positive, that just the care that they've taken to really look at this, and the speed at, because nothing really happens very quickly in Washington generally. So, that was relatively quick for people that can't agree on much. So that, as a business owner, that gives me, that gives me a little bit of, okay, they are really attempting, to keep this from the economy completely driving off of a cliff. And most of the business owners that I talk to, generally, they do have a positive outlook on it. It's just, depending on what type of business you are, it's just like, if you can survive long enough to get to when you can get the doors, the doors back open, because, for the restaurants, they're really struggling, or even, the hair salons, or, people in massage that just had to completely shut down, and there's no remote option, for what they do. For those folks, it's just figuring out how long it's going to be. It's like, if we can get on the other side of this, I think we will definitely recover, and and businesses will be in a good position to do so.
Yeah, and just kind of one more point on that topic is, bottom line is we're sitting here on a 3-way presenter Zoom conference, right? So the way business is conducted, especially for those service businesses that don't need direct contact, it is changing forever. The scope of which business will be conducted moving forward, it won't go back to the inefficient kind of ways. So again, kind of just piggybacking on the folks that do have the opportunity to kind of capitalize on being more productive, being more efficient, doing more virtual kind of stuff, they're going to do really well. Profit margins over time are going to increase dramatically. Cash flows are going to go up. So the idea of this being a completely bad thing, to me is, I do see that businesses moving forward will rely more on technology. They'll rely more on things, which may mean some pressure on the lower end of the wage scale. But by and large, productivity is going to go up from this. And it seems bizarre to think that this event would have taken us here. But we've been kind of driving toward this for a number of years. And this just happened to be the impetus to get us really on the other side of it. So
And I can agree, just for what I do, and I have a technology company, but, just some of the meetings that we've been doing virtually, I was telling my husband, I said, a lot of this stuff, is even going to switch how we do business. Like, a lot of the meetings that we've been having, and I am a big believer in face-to-face, but then I'm also a big believer in, harnessing technology, to save us some time. And I think a lot of businesses that have gone remote that would have never considered it are going to be doing at least a hybrid version of that, going forward. So, I'm the same as you, that I feel that there will be a lot of positive things that will kind of pull through, through this time. So I want to thank Pam and Grayson for chatting with us today. And I just want to make sure, Was there anything else, and I'll go to Pam first and then I'll go to Grayson. Was there anything that that you feel that we should hit on today that we didn't hit on that's important for people to know? Is there anything that you wanted to add, Pam?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is kind of just as Grayson, I am doing strategy sessions with folks for free. And I put the calendar link in the chat that you can directly book on my calendar. And it looks like there were a few questions that came forward. I think it's mainly for Grayson, though, the questions, but that was it in the chat box.
Okay. All right, perfect. And we'll be sure we get those all answered. Thanks
you for having me. Yeah,
I'm excited. Thank you, Grayson. Now, was there anything we didn't hit on from your perspective that we need to?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is a busy time for a financial advisor, so I could talk for hours and hours on all the things going on.
Right.
I won't do that for you guys. I will just piggyback on a couple things that Pamela was saying, to really just hit home your estate plan and making sure that things just go without a hitch. Make sure you do have beneficiary designation. So that's something, if you're working with an advisor, regardless of whatever the financial product is, maybe it's an IRA, a brokerage account, whatever, have assigned beneficiaries on these things. It's super simple to do, but without it, you could be in a mess. So anyway, I'll just throw that out there. But outside of that, I think just keep your cool about you, right? Don't think terribly irrationally right now. The world isn't, falling off a cliff, right? Like it feels like it. Everything's super weird.
It is weird.
But stay healthy. Follow the guidelines to keep your family safe. We're gonna get through this, and we're gonna do pretty well, I think, on the other side if we do have a plan. So if you don't have a plan in place, certainly reach out to us. If you do want to schedule one of the free hour sessions that we're doing for folks that are impacted right now, you can go to our website, millennialwealthmanagement.com, and you can just schedule your introductory meeting. You'll see the button right up at the top. So,
okay. Awesome. And then Pam, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you? I know you put some info in the chat as well.
Yeah, so my website is lifelegacyfirm.com, and that has all my contact information as well and how you can get a hold of me.
Okay, awesome. And what I will do, I want to thank you both for joining us. It was really good information. I will get your information also emailed out